One of the things you know for sure at this point, if you've been watching the show consistently, is that in this moment, Trump cannot afford to lose any support from people who previously supported him. We did a whole segment today talking about one group after another that it seems Harris is making inroads in. This is a different story. Someone that Harris is not trying or should try to or associating at all with, not trying to make inroads with, I should say, but someone who is maybe one of the most avid Trump supporters who's abandoning Trump for a reason it's kind of hard to understand. But I do want to check in on it. You remember that person, terrible, terrible person, that Trump had dinner with? Not the Kanye West or Ye West, him too, but also Nick Fuentes. He's what you would call a neo-Nazi, anti-Semite, Holocaust denier, bigot of every sort, it appears. And he somehow is still influential among a population of especially really young men with flawed values, we'll say. And he has declared war on the Trump campaign. His language. I'll show that to you. But as we get into that clip and his reasoning for it, I do want to first give a little context. He once said, by the way, Nick Fuentes, that he said this, quote, "Forget the Constitution. I swear allegiance to Donald Trump. Long live the rightful king of America." So if Trump's even losing support from some of those people, he might be in a tough spot. Now, the reason is, here's a phenomenon I was curious about. Will Trump's attempt to win back some swing voters alienate his hardcore base? That's what this is an example of, right? Which is why we're talking about it. Because he's desperately trying and failing, because he's not disciplined enough, to win back some of those people that Kamala Harris is making inroads with. We talked about the stat of Kamala Harris making like a 9 percentage point gain compared to Biden's numbers in battleground states, non-college educated, I should say, white voters, a group that Trump has a lot of support among. Kamala Harris is getting back some of that support. And so as Trump panics about that and tries to win back over those gettable swing voters, more moderate voters, and says things like his posts about being for reproductive rights of women, is that going to push away his hardcore supporters? And it seems that is what this is about. Try to decipher this hype video that Nick Fuentes posted.
Politics is not about the what. It's not about the how. It's not about the why or the when. It's about who. Because when you're up against the entire world, and it's about Lebanon and Ukraine and trillions of dollars, and it's about the fate of nations and billions of people, and everybody wants to shoot you in the face, it matters who's next to you at your rally. It matters who they are and what their loyalty is and whether they love America first. There are people that would take a bullet for him. They were at greatagain.org and they're in Project 2025. And it's the Groypers. And it was the people that were at January 6th and Stop the Steal, not the people that sat home. And thank God that God himself intervened and made him turn his head.
Okay, so I guess essentially what we're getting from this is some of the new people, as Trump's campaign is panicking and is trying to bring in new advisors and stuff, some of those people around Trump are rhinos. They're not MAGA enough for Fuentes and his ilk. J.D. Vance was one of the images shown while he was talking about people who are, again, sort of rhino type people. And Nick Fuentes responded to the post where Trump said, "My administration will be great for women and their reproductive rights," which was crazy given his history on that. Don't believe it. But Nick Fuentes says, "This morning, Trump posted on Truth Social that he will defend women's reproductive rights." At this point, what is even the difference between this campaign and the Democrats? This show's community is rapidly growing, and I'm so grateful for that every day. If you want to make sure that you're part of that, check to make sure you clicked the subscribe button. Easy, free, simple, but makes all the difference. I appreciate it. Back to the video. And that brings us to the main video that we're talking about, which is this.
In the middle of September, 2 weeks from now, I will be traveling to Michigan to give a press conference to announce all of these things. We will wait and watch for a J.D. Vance or Donald Trump campaign event, and we will counter-program it with a large crowd. And we will deliver, in addition to other strategies, our grievances and our complaints of how this campaign is not living up to America First. But it's not only a press conference. There, we will begin setting up a ground game that will include everything that a traditional campaign includes. And I'll let you guess what that is. There will be some surprises. But in the next 2 weeks, we will be planning it. We will be spending money. We will be designing things. And we will be making a lot of calls and emails to volunteers that have signed up to help us. And in the middle of September, 2 weeks from now, with the details forthcoming, we will finally be traveling to Michigan, and we will take the message to the Trump campaign live and in person. They didn't hear us on Twitter. They didn't hear us on Truth Social. They just censored the hashtags. They didn't hear us when we emailed them, and they didn't hear us when the Washington Post and every other news media outlet reported it. So now we are going to travel to Michigan, and we will say it to their faces with a crowd of actual America Firsters. What we do have is at least 10,000 absolute loyalist America First soldiers that are willing to do everything in their power, peacefully, lawfully, and legitimately within the political system, to deprive this campaign of votes as long as it forfeits them by betraying America First policy.
So to translate, and this is going to be crazy if you live in the world I live in, but in their world, Trump's not far right enough anymore because of those around him. So someone like Fuentes would say Trump's amazing, but those around him are misleading him, making him say things like, I might be more moderate on reproductive rights, which again, we shouldn't believe that. We should vote against him. And he's just trying to win an election. But to them, that feels like they're being betrayed. And so he's not MAGA enough for this brand of MAGA. And then I think I was curious as well. You know how Trump says Project 2025? They're too far right. They're too radical for me. I don't associate me with them. Because he knows those are people who totally would be helping to craft governmental policy. They are creating a plan for his governance if he wins. That's another example of we shouldn't buy his rhetoric of, I don't know anything about Project 2025, but I know enough to say that it's too extreme for me. But he politically can tell that's so distasteful to the American people that he should distance himself from it. And I was curious about this, and we're seeing at least here it play out, where that makes some MAGA people mad because they're thinking, hey, we like Project 2025. What the heck? Now, I do want to be clear. Nick Fuentes is a uniquely bad version of MAGA. So if you're someone and you're thinking, oh, don't act like MAGA as this one unit is represented by Fuentes. That's not what I'm saying. I understand he's even more to just sickening levels of ideology. An open neo-Nazi as an example. So I get that. I understand the distinction. But his brand of extremism is now going to go take volunteers to battleground states to work on the ground to prevent Trump from getting votes, to punish him for not being MAGA enough, which for us is great. So do that, okay? As a reminder, Politico reports former President Donald Trump hosted white nationalist and anti-Semite Nick Fuentes at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Palm Beach on Tuesday night. According to multiple people familiar with the event, y'all remember that big controversy. And Trump has really struggled to ever come out clearly and denounce Nick Fuentes. That came up in a J.D. Vance interview, by the way. Another thing, just to give you a sense of how bad we're talking, as to why it's crazy Trump had dinner with him. Nick Fuentes said it was betraying J.D. Vance's race to marry his wife, Usha Vance. Just disgusting. And when JD Vance was asked about it, he said the correct thing, which is Nick Fuentes is obviously wrong and terrible for saying that, but he still wiggled around the subject of Trump having dinner. Do a little introspection as to why the guy you're on the ticket with had dinner with a guy who said that about your family. And just so y'all know, because I know some people understand there's a stereotype out there of liberals calling anyone who's to the right Nazis. If you know Nick Fuentes, you know I'm not doing that. But if you don't, and you think I might be doing that, he's admitted these views. He said he loves Hitler. That was Kanye West, but Fuentes was super pumped about Hitler and just a terrible, terrible person. So, hardcore MAGA, Trump has a lot of problems with more reasonable, moderate people leaving him. He might have a problem to his right flank. And for that, I'm perfectly great with it. Have all the troubles you can. Donald. Let me know what you thought of that in the comments. If you want to get extra content daily, you can do it. And you can support the show too by clicking the join button below.